Somebody explain to me how I have used all of the explosives, how I've used almost all of my ammunition, and I don't even think you're close to dying. And also, someone explain to me why Parker is not helping me in the slightest. Can you please move your big ass upstairs and take some of the aggro off some of these enemies, because I am getting massacred right now. I desperately need help. Please. Why is this boss fight so annoying? What am I missing? Is it the rifle? Is it the rifle? It has to be the rifle. That is crazy. That is insane that I need that right now. I decided that now was time to play Resident Evil Revelations because one, it was part of a Humble Bundle I bought this year, and two, it's Halloween and I needed a new horror game to play. I played the sequel, but I was not a fan. That being said, I completed Resident Evil Revelations in about 8 hours and came to the conclusion that the game really holds up well today and is pretty solid. As this originally released around the time as Resident Evil 6, there's an emphasis on action. You're not as capable as you are in that title. You're not going to be diving on the ground and hitting shots while prone, but Revelations does feel like the sweet spot between Resident Evil 4 and 5. The gameplay is quick, and you are mobile enough to get around most enemies without taking damage. Now, while there is an emphasis on action, Revelations does feel more like a survival horror title than 6 does, but that's not because ammo is scarce. In fact, ammo is abundant in as long as you use your scanner. In addition to finding ammo lying around the environment, you're equipped with the Genesis. This is a tool in which you're going to be using to scan the environments. You'll find hidden items, which are mostly going to be comprised of herbs and ammunition. And if you happen to run low on herbs, you scan enemies, and once you reach 100%, an herb is added to your inventory. I really like this mechanic. There's a nice risk reward when facing enemies or bosses because you get a higher percentage when they are alive rather than when they're dead. The reason why I believe this game is more of a survival horror title is because enemies are sponges. You're going to burn through ammunition quickly because these have got to be the tankiest enemies in Resident Evil history. Even when you have upgraded your weapon's damage, these enemies are just tanking hits. For regular enemies, it's best to just get good at evasion and be better at it than me because I felt like I was just randomly dodging sometimes instead of doing it skillfully. Besides, you're going to need to conserve ammo for some of these boss encounters. For these fights, you're probably going to have to map out the environment, and the reason why I say this is because there are fights in this game that require the use of environmental hazards, while others require you to be as accurate as possible. The food court fight was frustrating for me because I burned through my ammunition, my grenades, and I used all the explosive tanks on the boss, and it still wasn't enough. My pistol and shotgun were as upgraded as I could get them, and I just felt like I wasn't making a dent. I noticed that there was rifle ammo strewn about the environment, and this is where I learned that the rifle was more than likely going to be my key to success. Here's the deal, though. The rifle, from what I've read on the 3DS, was like in the food court. For the rifle in the HD version, you actually had to go to a separate floor, which was something I had to reload the save and kind of backtrack to. It felt weird because that area was optional. And that's strange to me because the weapon is integral to your success. It also didn't help that you were constantly being swarmed by enemies while trying to get clean shots on the boss. Now listen, I appreciate tough fights in survival horror games like anyone else, but if you're going to give me an AI partner like Revelations does, please make them useful. I want to thank Parker for doing absolutely nothing the entire fight, but being in the way with infinite ammo and the damage of a mosquito bite. What a guy. By the way, the final boss fight, while cool in its design, was a bit of a slog because you needed to be perfect with your shot placement, and also the second and third phases require you to have fairly quick reaction speed. It's just a bit cheap when the boss teleports in and the weak spot is obstructed by their shoulder. It's going to open you up to cheap damage because the most effective weapon against them in this form is the shotgun or the sniper rifle. And by the way, Chris is there too, so you're not alone, but he happens to be shooting from an area and doing no damage, which, once again, why? So if you think about it, the game is more survival horror because your co-op partners are practically useless. They're only good for shutting the door in your face when you're trying to navigate the environment. Why, thank you, Chris, for opening the door and then closing it on me. I thought we were short on time. The music makes it sound like we need to operate with a sense of urgency. I guess I was wrong. That's on me. On top of doing little to no damage to enemies, their reaction times to enemies are laughable. What's the point of them accompanying you if they can't even draw aggro? I guess they're there for moral support, to maybe make you feel like you're not alone, even though it really is one person against the entire apocalypse. Personally, I think they're there to scare the crap out of you when they teleport in front of you randomly. I almost dropped my controller on this part. I have never seen Parker move that fast. It absolutely caught me off guard. And I understand that this is a remaster of a handheld title, but they could have updated the AI a smidge to make them a bit more competent. I guess the silver lining is that you don't have to worry about picking them up because they never go down. Not even when you're feeling grenade happy. In my opinion, the best part of Revelations is the Queen Zenobia, in which the game is set for the most part. The ship is massive and has a number of distinct environments, and it really reminds you of the older Resident Evil titles. Think of the Spencer Mansion or the Raccoon City Police Department. While not as detailed in my opinion, these are still pretty impressive visually. As you progress through the ship, you're going to notice there are a number of locked doors and caches that can't be opened unless you have a key card or a special key. It's recommended you backtrack as soon as you acquire those because the rewards in those rooms are generally worth it. The map is also pretty good in this game, and you should rarely get lost. I will say that when you're not on the Queen Zenobia, the game does take a slight dip in terms of environmental quality. Those areas can feel pretty drab and uninteresting, and it doesn't help that you can't access weapon caches or commit to upgrades. These are strictly for story purposes, and for the most part, the narrative is just okay. That said, it is really nice to play as Jill Valentine again. After Resident Evil 3, a number of fans had wondered where she went because in RE5 you saw her as a villain, and while it's disappointing to see her as the lead in the spin-off title, it's still pretty cool that she's the head of it. When the chapters move away from Jill, though, they range from being solid to really feeling like filler. The episodes with Quint and Keith have important moments, but man, these could have just been cutscenes. As characters, they are completely forgettable. The dialogue for Resident Evil games has never been great, but with them, it is just bad. Their final playable chapter is weird and probably should have been adjusted for the HD release. There's a pretty large combat section in which hordes of enemies just straight up ignore Quint, even though he's doing the one thing that they should stop. And you would think Keith should protect him, but they never get close to targeting Quint at all. It's a very strange section, and I was honestly relieved when their chapters were over. Now, I honestly liked the episodes with Parker and Jessica because they provided important exposition regarding the events that happened prior to Revelations. But these sections themselves aren't that challenging, and also some of them just feel like you're walking down the same hallway over and over and over again. It's really noticeable. By the way, Jessica's face in these moments are downright creepy. She has this permanent smile, and it is super uncomfortable. And as it's the spooky season, you can now share in my discomfort. You do get to play as Chris briefly, and I feel like these episodes can be pretty fun. I like the fact that he almost has no interest in Jessica, even with her best attempts. Seriously though, look at what she's wearing. Like, what the hell is that? How is that tactically efficient? Like, it's clear that Chris has one thing on his mind, and it's Wesker. I mean, finding Claire a boyfriend? No, I mean justice. Justice, that's right. The dude wants to rid the world of BOWs, and nothing will stop him except for playgrounds in Hong Kong. You know, it's weird kind of playing Revelations today knowing that most of the plot threads that were created will never be fully resolved. There's an endgame cutscene that hints at a bigger plot line, but after Resident Evil 6, the franchise saw a soft reboot. I highly doubt that we'll see Parker, Jessica, Raymond in any of the Resident Evil games moving forward, but maybe we'll see them in the CG movie or CG television show spin-offs. Who knows? To its credit, though, Revelations had a number of good ideas. It's one of the few spin-offs from the main series that I believe could contend with entries from the main franchise, with the other being Resident Evil Code Veronica. I like the fact that it made an attempt to be a survival horror title, even though it was clear that it still leaned to the action horror elements prevalent with RE4 through RE6. It's appreciated because this could have easily been a strict action game with horror elements, and Capcom didn't bite, so kudos to them. Also, I really like the episodic nature of this game. I like the fact that you're given time to absorb the information and also unwind a bit because of that intense encounter you were just in. I really feel like they could have probably not stretched it out as much. I don't feel like 12 episodes was necessary because some of them just could have been cutscenes. Some of them just could have been dialogue or journal entries or whatever they needed to be. They didn't need to be episodes, is what I'm saying. I didn't need to play as Quint or Keith. I didn't have to do that at all. Totally cool with the Terra Grigia background stuff. That's very cool. But I really, really did not need to play as Quint or Keith. Just saying. Also, the Queen Zenobia for me was a big highlight. I enjoyed the fact that you're stuck at sea with an ever-mutating virus. It really reminded me of Cold Fear, which was a 2005 survival horror title from Ubisoft, and that was set on a Russian whaler. Now, the big difference was that Cold Fear had some fixed camera angles, and the game wasn't actually good. Like, Revelations is pretty good. So, so no offense to the handful of fans of Cold Fear, but let's be honest, it had a lot of problems. Overall, though, Resident Evil Revelations was a solid title, and I really recommend it if you haven't played it in a long time. And if you've never played it, I'm sorry for spoiling everything. I really hope you can forgive me. That's going to do it for this video, though. If you like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. It really helps out the channel. I'm Parker from Resident Evil Revelations, and you'll never see me again.